What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we've got some lovely new Digimon Tamer cards that we need to be having a little bit of a look at. So let's have a little bit of a look at them, shall we? I should mention I'm getting the translations here off of digimoncard.dev, a really cool website, and one that I am a rather large fan of indeed. And we're going to start off with a pair of cards that very much are a pair of cards, and look rather similar. So let's start off with Davis MOTOMIYA. Yep, that's right, our first Davis card. What we've got here is a 4-cost blue Tamer, and now as a side note, every Tamer card we've seen so far has a security skill that says you can play it without paying the cost if it comes out as a security card. That remains true for all three of the ones we're talking about today. So we're not going to talk about the security skills. You just put them into play without paying their cost. We've talked about it. We've seen it many times. It's kind of cool. It's very standard. It doesn't give you a reason to play one Tamer over another, and we shan't be mentioning it again today. So back to Davis then. If your memory is 2 or less at the start of your turn, it becomes free. And when it's played, you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you add 1 blue and 1 green Digimon each to your hand, and put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck, in any order. So let's start off with that first one then. If at the beginning of your turn your memory is 2 or less, it becomes free. We've seen this before. We saw this in Matashita in Ultimate Power, which was absolutely the same. We saw it in TAME, the Black Tamer, back in Ultimate Power. Now, weirdly enough, we only saw it in the pair of them. There were no other colours. We saw 1 black, we saw 1 purple. Essentially, the new colours got these Tamers, but we didn't see them in any others. Now, it is worth bearing in mind that we saw very similar things back in New Evolution, and that was for all 4 of the original colours, but not for purple or black. We had a suite of them, 1 for each colour, like Mimi Tachikawa, that if your memory was 2 or less, it became free. So essentially, up to now, every colour has had 1 Tamer, whereby if your memory is 2 or less at the beginning of your turn, it becomes free. And this is another one, because the fact of the matter is, Davis does this, but so does the Matashita from New Evolution. So we've now got 2 4-cost blue Tamers that put your memory from 2 to 3 at the beginning of your turn. A quick ruling note here that if we look at the Matashita from the blue starter deck, that says that at the beginning of your turn, if your opponent has any Digimon with no evolution sources, you gain a memory. We have had a ruling here that says you essentially apply them in whichever order you like. So if you've got 2 memory, Davis puts you up to 3, and then Matashita gives you an extra memory to put you up to 4. So we've basically got a direct competitor to the Matashita from New Evolution. So the question is it better? Well, the second skill here really does say, look, are you playing a blue and green deck? Because you can look at the top 3 cards and find a blue Digimon, or you can look at the top 3 cards and find a green Digimon. Although if you're just playing a green Digimon deck, I'm not sure you'd be playing a blue Tamer. Clearly here, you're getting the most mileage out of this if you are playing a hybrid blue-green deck. But it's also worth bearing in mind that even if you are playing a hybrid blue-green deck, there is no guarantee that in the top 3 cards of your deck, there's going to be a green and a blue Digimon. You might have only green, you might have only blue, you might have Tamers and option cards, etc. that ruin it. But certainly in terms of speed and consistency, this one is quite hard to beat. The other Matt said if you play a blue Digimon, you can rest this card to discard a Digivolution source, and essentially the decision between these 2 cards is going to be very easy. In a hybrid blue-green deck, I think it's going to be difficult to not play Davis. But Matt is going to be great in any deck where you are looking to get rid of Digivolution sources, but you've also got stuff like Old Force Veedramon decks, whereby if your blue Tamer becomes rested, this Digimon becomes active. So clearly this is going to be a very good Tamer to be playing in an Old Force Veedramon deck. Of course, it is worth bearing in mind that we also do have a promo Taichi Tamer, which is a 2-cost blue Tamer that does allow you to rest it. i.e. if you want to be playing Old Force Vegemon and you just want a blue tamer to get rested, this is a 2-cost tamer that you can rest rather than having to play a 4-cost, so it does give you a good alternate option in that regard. My point is, these are 2 very good tamers, but they do very different things. So yes, in a way, they've got the first skill. They're both 4-cost tamers. They're both blue. So you do have to choose between them. But honestly here, the decision should be a rather easy one because they fit in very different decks. So I really don't think you're going to be spending a huge amount of time desperately deciding which one you'd rather play. Moving on then, we can have a look at the other one that looks very similar to this. It is the green Ken Ichiyoji. And again, apologies for the pronunciation here. And what Ken does, it's a 4-cost green tamer, and at the start of your turn, if your memory is 2 or less, it becomes free. We've talked about this, we don't go into a huge amount of detail, we don't need to, except to say that yes, there is another one that will do this for green. It's Mimi Tachikawa, who I've made no secret on this channel might be my favourite of the tamer cards we've seen before, seen so far. We'll get to that in a second. As for the second skill that we see on Ken here, on your turn, when your green or blue Digimon destroys your opponent's Digimon by battling and survives, you may rest this card and gain 1 memory. Oh. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's really good. You got to rest it, so it's kind of limited to once during your turn, but it is worth bearing in mind that you could play multiple Kens. And if you've got 4 Kens in play, and I know that's difficult to do, but let's just say you do. If you've got 4 Kens in play, you destroy your opponent's Digimon with a green or blue that survives, and then all of a sudden you rest all 4 of them and gain 4 memory. And memory is what you use to pay for all of your cards. Memory is it's the resource, it is what you use. So clearly this is a phenomenal option if you can pay the 4 cost, if you can get it into play. Bearing in mind, you are going from below free to free memory anyway, and then gaining more memory during your turn. That is potentially a lot of memory that you can be playing around with during your turn, which really is kind of redonkulous. It is also worth bearing in mind at this stage, I do just want to give a shout out to the Tyrannomon from Ultimate Power, that when you evolve into it, you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and put a level 5 Digimon and a green tamer from them into your hand. So, if you are looking for green tamers, this is a really nice option to actually search them out and get them just that little bit more easily. Certainly a card I'm quite a fan of. And of course it's kind of strange because this is clearly for blue-green decks, and Davis is clearly for blue-green decks. They do very different things, but they would both work nicely in a hybrid blue-green deck. And we know that one of the things about Union Impact is that they are going to want us to be playing more hybrid decks, so it's kind of cool this is in here. My biggest issue with Ken is that she's not Mimi. And the thing is, I think Mimi is phenomenal. Mimi's got the skill whereby if you've got a level 5 or higher green Digimon, you can rest Mimi and either hatch a Digi-Egg in your raising area or move a level 3 or above Digimon from the raising area to the battle area. Or to put it another way, you get a second raising phase. So most games, you hatch an egg and then you can evolve it, and then next turn you can bring it out. Here, you can hatch an egg, evolve it up, and then Mimi brings it out. And then next turn, you hatch an egg and evolve it, and Mimi brings it out. And you can really accelerate that. And I think that is a huge advantage. Having said that, gaining extra memory is also a huge advantage. So I think green decks are becoming quite good. And one last thing to mention about Ken here, you're cool. You don't need to play a hybrid blue-green deck. With Davis, we said, look, you're searching a blue and a green. You really are only getting full value if you're playing a hybrid deck. Ken here works beautifully in a green deck or a blue deck. And the weird thing is, I could see people playing an entirely blue deck just playing this as a green tamer, because actually gaining loads of extra memory is awesome. And of course, if you're playing an entirely blue deck, you're not going to be playing Mimi Tachikawa. So even though in green decks I prefer Mimi, this is a really, really good option for blue decks. Although, just a quick reminder, Old Force Veedramon needs your blue Tamer to be rested, so even though this is a good Tamer for blue decks, it won't work with Old Force Veedramon. And finally, we've got Joe Kido. Joe Kido is a black Tamer now, which is a little bit weird, because back in Ultimate Power, Joe Kido was a blue Tamer. But we know that the Tamers are going to flick around a bit, and we shouldn't be too scared or upset about it. A little bit scared, couple of tears, but nothing too major. And this is a very different card, but this was revealed in a magazine rather than in YouTube or the others, so that's why we're looking at 3 Tamers and 2 are similar and 1's different. They were revealed in different places. Now, Joe Kido is a 2-cost black Tamer, so it's nice and cheap, and it is worth bearing in mind, up to now we've only seen a single black Tamer. We've only seen the TAME we mentioned earlier that came out in Ultimate Power. So if nothing else, this is just a cheap black Tamer. We've gone from only having a 4-cost to now having a 4 or a 2-cost. That alone is genuinely significant. But at the start of your turn, if you've got a Digimon with blocker, you gain 1 memory. I adore this Tamer. I think this Tamer is absolutely beautiful, and I think in black decks this is just phenomenal. Because the thing is, black decks have more blockers than other decks. Black didn't come in New Evolution, there were no black cards. But back in Ultimate Power, we had a bunch. We had Gotsumon, who was your level 3 blocker. We then had Gardramon, who was your level 4 blocker. We then had Andromon, who was your level 5 blocker. And Wargreymon, who was your level 6 blocker. And I talk about Wargreymon a lot because I adore the card. But Wargreymon's got both blocker and reboot. It means it makes itself active during your opponent's active phase as well as during your active phase. So essentially block on their turn, then make yourself active, and then attack on your turn and then make yourself active, and round we go. This is one of those Tamers where you look at it and you go, well, of course it's a black Tamer. It wouldn't make sense for other colours. It had to be a black Tamer. And I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's a good black Tamer. If you're playing a black deck which isn't using the blockers, fine. But bearing in mind, the other good level 6 from Ultimate Power was Machinedramon, who also has blocker. Maybe you're not. Maybe you are making a black deck without blocker, and one would presume that there are going to be fewer blockers in Union Impact. And it does look a little bit like that from the cards we have seen before. I mean, I showed you Metaletamon the other day, black level 6 that doesn't have blocker, although does have a really fun skill that says it cannot be blocked, so I very much appreciate that. But the fact of the matter is, one of the things that black decks do better than the others is blocking. And now you're telling me I can have a 2-cost black Tamer who gives me an extra memory at the beginning of every turn if I've got a Digimon with blocker, which I probably do, and all of a sudden we got a 2-cost Tamer that just gives you an extra memory at the beginning of every turn. That is amazing. I told you about the starter deck Matt earlier, but you only get an extra memory if you've got an opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources. This seems easier to actually get rolling. I told you about all the ones that take you from below 3 memory to 3 memory, but on those turns where you start with 3 or more, you don't get any benefit. Joe just comes along and goes, don't worry, boys, I've got this, and that is awesome. I should mention the lovely translated scan here that's all nicely cleaned up does come from the lovely folks over at digimoncard.dev. We like them. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. 3 new Tamers, lots to get excited about. For me personally, it's Joe. Joe is the best one of the lot here, but I think there's a lot to get excited about and a lot to fall in love with. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy. That's where we talk about Digimon and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.